everyone. This is Shintai, host of the Anime Room, and here with me again, I have my good friend Dom. How you doing, man?
Yeah, pretty good. Glad that we finally got to do this.
Definitely. Now, to those who are unaware, I had Dom with me last time when we talked about Berserk. You should definitely check that video out. Only after you've seen Berserk, though, because we basically spoil the whole fucking show. But if you have seen Berserk and you haven't seen that discussion, please check it out. I thought it was very good discussion. This time, we're going to be talking about what is one of my all-time favorite anime movies, probably just favorite movies in general, Perfect Blue. This was directed by the late Satoshi Kon. In my opinion, I think this is his best work, at least based on what I've seen. I've also seen Paprika and Tokyo Godfathers, which are also great films. Magnificent director in general. When I recommended it to Dom here, I thought this would be a great gateway for possibly checking out some of his other movies. Also showing, again, because Dom is still new to anime, showing him what I consider to be like one of the pinnacles in anime film. Dom, real quick, I want to talk about an experience that he had with the movie, and I found this interesting because after I saw the movie, I felt like I wanted to rewatch it. And you told me after you watched it that it had affected you on a level that made you feel like you couldn't easily go back to it and watch it again. So why don't you tell us about that real quick?
This movie is definitely one of the most unpleasant experiences I've had watching a movie. It's really just psychological stuff that kind of gets to me. Like, violence does nothing for me, but psychological, oh man. I actually felt like taking a break a couple of times during the film. I don't know, I think I want to sleep tonight. I mean, I love the film, but I would probably never watch it again.
That is very interesting because I've seen the movie twice now, and I could easily see myself going, yeah, I'll watch it a third time because I liked it that much. But I can understand where you're coming from, where it's just one of those things where it hits you in a way that you don't expect. And it's just like once was enough. There are a few movies I can think of where I feel like once is enough, like Grave of the Fireflies. I can't really see myself ever wanting to see that movie again. It's a great film, but woof, was it rough to sit through, and yeah, I don't think I can sit through it again. So I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, there's other films that I definitely could not sit through again, like Schindler's List is an obvious one. I don't think I could watch the entirety of Gran Torino, because, God, that ending is fucking sad. Oh, and also Million Dollar Baby as well. I can't rewatch that again.
I know that some people might think like, oh, if you can't rewatch it, therefore you didn't like it that much, and that's not necessarily the implication. It's that it had this impact, this sort of emotional trigger that makes it so that it's difficult to go back to. It's so good that it had this much of an impact.
Yeah, definitely.
So the movie is basically about this pop idol. She wants to get out of that business and she wants to get into movies. She wants to become an actress. She did a role in a series and apparently she was really good at it, and she wanted to move away from singing so she could become an actress. The movie is her journey as we see her buckle under the stress of what she's been going through, as well as dealing with other things like a crazy stalker, and her slowly losing grips on her sanity and her perception of reality.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really liked about this movie is how it handles her hallucinations. When this movie first came out, there were some critics that were saying, why is this an anime movie? This should have just been live action. To that, I say, especially back then, I don't think they would have achieved the effect that the director wanted to capture with some of her hallucinations. I think in an anime form, it didn't come off as tacky or hokey when you saw the pop idol version of the main character bouncing around. It created this sort of unsettling feeling to it, and I think especially given when this movie came out, mid-90s, if it was a live action film, the effects they would have used would have looked really hokey and it would not have looked that good. So I think it being an animation definitely worked in this movie's favor.
Yeah, definitely. A certain sequence at the end of the film would look pretty horrible in live action. The ending chase sequence. It would look really cheesy, like the part where one character basically glides from the balcony to the other building. That would just look so cheesy.
It would. And that, especially since that scene is so important because it was basically reality and her hallucination colliding at the same time. And it's become so hard for her to discern what is real and what is not. I thought that was so excellently shot. You would see what she's seeing in her hallucination, where she saw the pop idol version of herself bouncing around. And then in reflections, you would see what's actually happening. And I thought that was handled really effectively.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that character that was chasing her, which was basically her manager, I thought was a really interesting character in that it was really subtle throughout the movie, and you probably wouldn't catch it the first time around, but throughout the movie, it's definitely implied that this person used to be a pop idol as well, and then she grew older, she let herself go, and she got fat. In becoming the main character's manager, she started growing an inferiority complex. She wanted to, in a sense, relive her glory days through the main character, to the point where it started to really mentally fuck with her head, where she started believing that she was the main character.
Yeah. Oh man, that was one of the more disturbing elements of the film, that whole thing.
Throughout the movie, she seems like such a nice person. When you get to that point and you kind of look back on the movie, you start to realize the cracks in her personality. And it's like, oh, she had been fucked up for a while now.
Yeah. One of the things I really liked about the film was its portrayal of a folie à deux, or known in psychiatric terms as induced delusional disorder, which is pretty much what Rumi was doing to Mima, making her lose her grip on reality. And she feels like, this is what I got, she tried to get rid of Mima so she could live her insane fantasy of being Mima herself, which is pretty much what I interpreted from the end of the film.
Now, the end of the film is actually kind of controversial in that I know a lot of people don't like it. And one of our friends actually has voiced that's the thing that he disliked most about the movie. And personally speaking, while I wouldn't go as far as say like it's an amazing ending or anything, I thought it was a very fitting ending in that this whole movie was her journey in dealing with stress and her crazy manager and all of this stuff. And I feel like she had been through so much, she had suffered so much. The ending was kind of the story's way of going, you've been through enough, it's time for you to go back to your normal life.
Yeah, exactly. If they ended it on some kind of downer or bittersweet note, I'm like, okay, that's just typical. It would have been kind of cliche for the kind of movie it was.
Actually, yeah, I think I agree with that. If it just ended with, I don't know, her dying or something, the whole movie just would have been a downer from start to finish, and that would have been a little too much.
Yeah, it would.
I also feel like the ending also gives hope in the sense that she has not only been able to go back to her normal life, she now realizes who she is. And that was, I think, a prominent theme of the film, knowing who you are and coming to grips with who you are. She had been torn between who she sees herself as and who her fans see her as. The fans see her as like this perfect pop idol, and she's just a normal girl. I feel like the end of the movie really solidifies that she knows who she is now. She doesn't need to be who the fans want her to be. She just needs to be herself.
Yeah, exactly. But apparently Rumi parents sees her as that perfect thing, to the point where seeing Mima do things that are she feels are against her image, like doing the rape scene in that movie and taking more darker roles in films, was completely ruining her image to the point it drove her to murder.
I want to talk about that scene real quick because I don't know about you, but when I saw that scene, I felt that it was even more uncomfortable than an actual rape scene that I've seen in other films. In the context of the film, just to clarify, she was doing a part in a movie where her character gets raped. The way that it was handled was so awkward and disturbing, and it even had a mental effect on her, where after the fact, around other people, she tried to just pass it off as normal, but then when she had a moment by herself, she kind of broke down because of that scene where she was just screaming like, I didn't want to do it, but I had to, and it was just like, fuck.
Really, all of those scenes involving her and her pop idol personality, almost like speaking to her like some kind of ghost or something like that. All those scenes were uncomfortable to sit through, where the pop idol Mima is just passive aggressively, mockingly, cheerfully just insulting and degrading her. Those are just, oh man, all those scenes.
It's interesting because it's basically like she's criticizing herself. And in those scenes, the actual person is like speaking out against the pop idol version of her, trying to deny what she's saying, but that is her internal thoughts at the same time. She is criticizing herself.
Yeah.
Even though this is an older movie, there are a few times where the visuals kind of falter because of how old it is, but I would say even still, visually speaking, it's still a really good looking movie. But more importantly than that, I think the atmosphere in this movie is perfect. It captures exactly what it needs to.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was completely hooked from start to finish just by its overall atmosphere. I never felt like it started to falter or it started to become a completely different movie than from what it was. It just completely stayed true to what it was to the end. I'm glad it did that.
I remember you were telling me that you felt like the movie was as long as it needed to be.
If it was any longer, I would have had to finish the film another time. It was getting that disturbing for me. But I mean, yeah, it's just that pacing is flawless.
If it was even 10 or 15 minutes longer, it kind of would have felt like extra fat. Wouldn't really need to be there. I can't really think of any scenes in that movie where it didn't need to be there. It all felt important.
Another thing about the film, despite being an older anime film, the English dubbing is really, really good. I guess because there were a lot of dubbed anime films in the 90s that were horrible. Like Samurai X, Trust and Betrayal. I know it's no VA, but the dub is horrible.
That's why I told you for when you decide to watch that, you gotta watch it subtitled. That English dub does no favors for that magnificent anime.
Pretty much everybody did a good job. Ruby Marlowe is perfect as Mima, and Wendy Lee is very convincing as Rumi, and I was just really surprised everybody seems really into their roles.
I'm not surprised Wendy Lee especially did a good job. She's been in the business for a very long time. She's very good at what she does.
Yeah.
She's actually in another anime that you showed interest in, Cowboy Bebop. She's the main female character of that show. That was like probably the first time I heard her voice. She does a great job as Faye Valentine.
Oh, awesome. I do need to watch that.
I think the first time I saw Perfect Blue, I saw it dubbed, but when I saw it recently, I actually saw it in Japanese, and in Japanese it was still really good. And I remember the English dub also being, really solid. I remember it being good. And sticking with the audio portion of the movie, I thought the music was so eerie and weird, especially like whenever she was having a hallucination. The music, it would just be so unsettling and strange. It worked really well.
Particularly during like the more suspenseful sequences, like the pseudo rape scene and the part where she's almost actually raped by the crazy stalker Mimania. And I'm like, Jesus. That kind of music really helps drive stuff like that forward. It's an unpleasant movie, but it's awesome.
Actually, there's a theory that part when she was attacked by Mimania, that was all hallucination. None of that was real.
Oh, then again, the movie does a great job of making even you lose grip on reality watching the film. You start to wonder what is actually happening, what is part of her movie, what is actually happening, what is not real, whatever. I mean, gee, even I was like, is this a movie designed to make you feel like you're insane? That's what I loved about it. It was just perfect.
A lot of the movie towards the latter half were instances where like she would be doing something, like she would be doing a shoot for the show, and then she would wake up in her room all of a sudden. She would then snap back to doing like another shoot in the series, and she'd be like in mid-sentence. And it really becomes hard to tell, like, wait, was this the dream? Was this real? Is it all real? Is it all hallucination? I don't fucking know anymore.
I mean, just watching the film, I felt like I was losing my goddamn mind. Satoshi Kon is a fucking man.
Yeah, Satoshi Kon is fucking awesome. And I still need to watch Millennium Actress, which has music composed by our favorite Susumu Hirasawa. Tokyo Godfathers and Paprika, man, you gotta definitely check those out. Those are great movies. In my opinion, not quite as good as Perfect Blue, but they're very different, and that's what I really liked about them. That's what I like about Satoshi Kon, is that he doesn't make the same thing twice. They're all like very distinctly different from each other. And I heard that Millennium Actress is also very much its own kind of film, and I just find that so interesting. Like every time he just makes like something almost completely different.
I was actually surprised reading about Perfect Blue. The movie only got mildly positive reviews. It only has like a 60-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was more popular in Japan than it was here.
That's a shame because I think it deserves much more accolades than that.
So Satoshi Kon has responded to the criticism about why Perfect Blue was animated. He just simply said he thought it would be more interesting animated.
I actually heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I actually heard that originally the movie was going to be live action, but that the film that they had, it was caught in a fire or something, or there's some sort of accident that happened, and they lost all of their footage, and then they turned to Madhouse Studio to finish the movie. Again, I don't know how true that is. That's just something I heard. Either way, Satoshi Kon must have really enjoyed making it an anime film, because after that, he decided, fuck it, I'm just gonna make anime movies from now on. And since then, he has been a very well-respected director. Like the movie Paprika, which I mentioned a few times, Christopher Nolan admitted that Paprika was an inspiration for his movie Inception. Going back to the movie, I can't think of many movies that are like as good as this in terms of psychological horror. Not that there aren't, of course there are. I feel like this movie is so focused. It knows what it is. It knows what it wants to be. It delivers on it, and it does a fantastic job.
Yeah, and apparently the opposite is the clone, Black Swan. I haven't seen it. I wanted you to say your thoughts in comparison and contrast to Perfect Blue.
So I watched Perfect Blue first, and then I watched Black Swan after, knowing that Black Swan borrowed elements from Perfect Blue. But going into Black Swan, I did want to try and divorce Perfect Blue as much as possible. I wanted to just go into it and just say, you know what, this is its own movie. I'm gonna judge it as its own movie. And after I watched it, it became really fucking hard because of how similar it was to Perfect Blue. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a ripoff, because I don't think that's true. To say that it isn't strongly inspired, I think is also untrue. It's very clear that the director was inspired by it. Because for one, he had completely ripped off the one scene from Perfect Blue where the main character was in her tub and she was yelling into the water. In that director's movie, Requiem for a Dream, really good movie, by the way. I really like Requiem for a Dream. It's a great movie. But he completely ripped off that scene. I heard that he had bought rights to make a Perfect Blue remake just so that he could rip off that scene. I don't know how true that is either. That's what I've heard. But if you look at the scenes side by side, they are literally the exact same thing. So it's very obvious that this guy has seen the movie Perfect Blue before. And there are so many aspects of Black Swan that are parallel to Perfect Blue. We have a young girl who is dealing with tons of stress. The stress is getting to her head. She's hallucinating. The hallucinations are reflective of things that she's going through. And there are parts of the movie where it becomes hard to tell what's real and what's not. Although Perfect Blue does a much better job. Whenever Black Swan did something, I knew right away that it wasn't real. There wasn't a time in the movie where it tricked me. Every single time something that was a hallucination, I picked up on it like almost immediately. And I also felt like the effects were a lot more hokey, and this was what I was talking about before, where I felt like Perfect Blue, it being an anime, worked in its favor, because the hallucinations worked really well, and it didn't look hokey and it didn't look tacky or anything like that, so it didn't pull you out of the experience. Black Swan tried really hard. For what it did, it did well enough, but there were still times where the visual effects just looked hokey and also very, very on the nose. Towards the end of the movie, the main character is dancing in front of the stage, and she literally starts sprouting wings. And to me, that was, oh, I wonder what this means. It means that she's completely integrated herself in the role. No fucking shit. I never felt like the symbolism was that obvious in Perfect Blue. I don't mean to trash Black Swan. I don't think it's a bad movie. In fact, I think it's a pretty good movie. But when compared to Perfect Blue, I think Perfect Blue is a much better film. I think it's much better written, better directed. I don't know, you can call me a weeaboo if you want. I don't fucking care. I think it's a better movie.
At least there are no out of place and really dumb masturbation scenes in Perfect Blue, at least.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that scene. To those who don't know, in Black Swan, it's just like the dumbest scene in the whole fucking movie. It's so bad. Where the main character wakes up in the morning and her instructor told her you should masturbate and live a little because she's like a very stiff person. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And she started doing it. She then looks over to her left and then realizes that her mother is asleep right next to her. and she didn't realize it, and she felt like so ashamed. She was just like, oh my god, I can't believe I did that. And I'm just like, how the fuck do you not realize that someone's asleep in your room?
Oh man.
It was so ridiculous.
Oh god, I'm sure it is. The way you describe it.
And it wasn't like she was sleeping on the floor or anything. I could somewhat swallow that. But she wasn't. She was sleeping on a chair in plain view right next to her bed. It was so dumb.
Oh man.
I also didn't like how the movie had all of these jump scares in it. It seemed really out of place.
Yeah, you told me about that. Like, you're just watching a movie, nothing's really happening, and then bam.
Yeah, just all of a sudden, just something would pop in my face, and I'd literally jump and just be like, fuck you, movie, what was that for?
Maybe Darren Aronofsky is making sure you didn't fall asleep halfway through.
Maybe, I don't know. But making fun of Black Swan, it's not bad. It's a decent movie. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it was also really hard not to compare it to Perfect Blue, even though I tried not to. If you look on it on its own, it is a good movie. But yeah, Perfect Blue's way fucking better.
Definitely, and I haven't even seen Black Swan.
I'd like for you to see it just to hear your opinion on it, but that's up to you, man.
I mean, the way you described it, it sounds like a somewhat dumber, more obvious, and more hokey version of Perfect Blue, but I'll check it out.
Pretty much, yeah, Perfect Blue is fucking awesome. I kind of feel like this is like Dom's journey through anime almost. I'm trying to get you into like some really great stuff. Started you off strong with Berserk, and you checked out Perfect Blue as well, and you really like them. Trying to get you to watch Samurai X Tristan Betrayal and Fate Zero next.
Yeah, and I did finish Death Note, and I did check out some horrible stuff, though. I checked out Sword for Truth.
Oh yeah!
Your second most hated animated thing ever. I checked it out. Okay, this is also my second worst animated thing I've ever seen. The first goes to Space Thunder Kids.
For those curious, the worst anime thing I've seen is Junk Boy. There's literally nothing redeemable about that pile of shit.
At least Sword for Truth. You can kind of laugh a bit during the movie because there's a lot of comically bad scenes.
No, yeah, you can laugh at how bad it is. Alright, well, thank you again for joining me, Dom. Always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be here.
Hopefully we'll see you again. Maybe we'll discuss Fate Zero, maybe we'll discuss Samurai X Tristan Betrayal, or maybe Sword for Piece of Shit Truth. Who knows?
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Alright, take care everyone.